Babylon, Mad Men's 6th episode, is one of its finest hours. Among the standout storylines that drive the season forward include Dawn's first Dick Whitman flashback, the introduction of the Roger and Joan affair, and the discovery of Peggy's copywriting talent, which proves to be the beginning of her career ascent. Each of these moments are pivotal, providing character depth and really kickstarting the series, which is known to be a slow burn. What adds to its brilliance is the commentary happening within the character dynamics, the visuals, and the writing. The episode ends with Dawn watching a performance of the song Waters of Babylon.
By the waters of Babylon.
The show uses Babylon as a symbolic reference for themes including religion, politics, and gender. During her reluctant lunch with Dawn, Rachel provides Dawn with a minor history lesson.
Jews have lived in exile for a long time. First in Babylon, then all over the world. Shanghai, Brooklyn, and we've managed to make a go of it.
The concept of Jewish exile and Babylonian captivity is not only relevant in the conversation to Rachel's experience as a Jewish American, but also is used symbolically by the writers as a nod to the leading women in the episode who find themselves feeling confined in both work and relationships, metaphorically, captivity. Mad Men is a period piece showcasing the 1960s, and therefore commentary on both women's oppression and their liberation is under the microscope during the entirety of the series. Within the first few minutes of the episode, we see Dawn reading The Best of Everything by Rona Jaffe, a 1958 novel about career-oriented women at a publishing company in New York City who are looking for love and success. The book in itself is a time capsule, detailing many of the topics that Mad Men dives into, including sex, harassment, and abortions, and driving forces behind the character development. In this episode alone, we see Peggy land her first copywriting assignment. Rachel speaks to her sister about the struggles of managing a career and her love life.
It's 1960. We don't live in a shtetl. We can marry for love.
I'm not sure people do that anymore.
And Joan insists to Roger that she has the freedom to see whoever she wants romantically.
I go out and I have parties and I have friends over.
Male friends.
Yes.
I don't want to hear this.
Carol and I have this nice little rotation.
The inclusion of the novel intentionally sets the tone for the remainder of the episode. The first time we see Roger and Joan in the hotel room, he tells Joan,
I'd like to get you in a little fourth floor walk up somewhere with no doors, no windows, and lock you up for a week.
Roger is all but suggesting that he literally holds her captive. Joan, true to the spirit of The Best of Everything, defends her stance of seeing other people, reminding Roger that what they have is temporary. During the scene where the women are in the office trying on Belle Jolie lipstick, Joan bends over in front of the men who are behind her in a one-way mirror and turns around with a knowingly sly smile, as if to drive this point home to Roger. She wants control of the situation and does not want Roger to confuse where he stands, but he can't help himself. In their next meeting at the hotel room, he remains persistent.
Just hate the thought of having to share you.
He even gives her a caged bird, which is the episode's most obvious allusion to female captivity. Birds are used to symbolize the women and how the men view them. This is done through the writing explicitly. Freddie Rumsden first does this when suggesting that the women in the office are better suited for the Belle Jolie lipstick research.
Let's throw it to the chickens.
And later, when Freddie is telling Dawn about Peggy's insight.
Point is, while the rest of the hens were busy pulling out each other's feathers, that one saw the benefit, not the feature.
Really?
Yeah. She said she didn't want to be one of 100 colors in a box.
Notice that Peggy's insight not only alludes to her being an outlier among the office women, but also makes mention of being in a box, as if it's something to break free from. For Joan, a caged bird represents her fear of Roger's control in her relationship. And for Peggy, it's a fear of being boxed into her expected role as a secretary. Peggy becomes a defining television character and a representation for career-minded women of that era. She isn't content with the status quo, and she rises through the advertising ranks during the series. The references to Bird extend beyond just the episode and are recurring throughout the series. Look no further than Betty, who Dawn often refers to as Birdie. Betty's own mental captivity is due in part to the stranglehold that Dawn has on her mentally through lying, gaslighting, and manipulation. Dawn is uncomfortable when Betty challenges her role as a housewife. It doesn't help that Betty's own mother raised her to equate beauty and self-worth, as we learn later in the season. In Shoot, the 9th episode of the first season, we see Betty shooting a gun at her neighbor's pigeons. It's a rare moment of spontaneity and catharsis for her, but it's also a crushing metaphor. Birdie shooting at the birds reminds us of how many of Betty's hardships are self-inflicted. She could fly, but she hasn't broken free from the pressure and expectations from society and those closest to her. This changes in future seasons, but metaphorically speaking, she is still caged in season 1, largely due to Dawn's control and mind games. The show uses Babylon and birds to highlight the larger theme of captivity and gender roles of the time period. Don Draper is often pegged as a capitalist hero of modern media. In Babylon, Don's evening with his mistress, Midge, is interrupted by her beatnik companion Roy, which leads to an incredible scene of one-upping where the two fight over socio-economic values and Midge all at once.
Don's in advertising.
Perpetuating a lie. How do you sleep at night?
A bed made of money.
Roy exists in this episode as Don's contrast, painting him as the ultimate villain. It's no coincidence that the bar that these three attend is named the Gaslight. In modern times, the concept of Babylon takes on a whole new meaning in Rastafarianism. Rastafarians believe Babylon represents all evil. The exile of Africans in the slave trade is likened to the exile of Israelites in Mesopotamia. The suffering over time caused by colonialism, capitalism, and authoritarian corruption is seen as the culmination of Babylon. Roy is an anti-capitalistic voice used to flip that systemic narrative onto Don and label him as the evil in the world.
You hucksters in your tower created the religion of mass consumption.
Note the decision of the writers to use the word tower here. In Babylon, the Tower of Babel is often interpreted as an act of defiance against God as it was constructed to reach the heavens. Reading Roy's line as a reference to the Tower of Babel, it draws a comparison to the skyscraper at which Don goes to work every day. In this metaphor, Sterling Cooper is the Tower of Babel, with its own style of collective hubris and sin. The agency fuels mass consumption and indulges in alcohol, drugs, and sex in excess. Don's arrogance and feeling of invincibility is not characteristic of someone who is God-fearing. One of the recurring shots in the opening credits features an animation of Don falling from the skyscraper, a possible fall from grace or reckoning. There's even a shot in the episode of a monolithic pillar in the lobby of Sterling Cooper. It's likely an intentional allusion to the Tower of Babel, as the scene doesn't feature any main characters and is otherwise a complete outlier to the episode. The color red is ubiquitous in the episode, both visually and in the dialogue.
Whatever you want, Red.
Tropical boudoir red. The Red Sea parts before them.
Joan and Rachel both wear striking red dresses in the episode when meeting secretly with Roger and Don, respectively. Joan is wearing that same scarlet red dress during the Belle Jolie brainstorming, a scene in which she is the center of attention for most men in the office. If Sterling Cooper is the Tower of Babel, then Joan is the Whore of Babylon. Joan's dress, along with her golden necklace and brooch, is a near perfect parallel, visually, to the biblical illustrations of the Whore of Babylon. Now, it's important to emphasize that the show is not drawing this comparison misogynistically, per se, because it's done to show how the men in particular view the women. It's done to elucidate the Madonna whore complex that Don and Roger both struggle with. As we come to find out, Don's own mother was a prostitute, contributing to his romantic complex. He and Roger both want to pigeonhole their wives at home while getting their sexual gratification on the side. It's no coincidence that their two mistresses in the episode are the ones with the red dresses. In the book of Revelations, the Whore of Babylon is described in the following manner. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Joan is wearing purple during her first tryst with Roger. Roger even alludes to dressing her in pearls.
Like the pearl necklace I gave you?
It's gorgeous.
It's also noteworthy that Rachel is dressed in purple and pearls in the pilot episode, the first time we were introduced to her. It's apparent that at the very least, independent of any biblical reference, the show is intentionally drawing parallels between Joan and Rachel in the first season through costume. Note that the lipstick brainstorming scene is a literal representation of the male gaze. The men in the office objectify the women, Joan in particular, through a one-way mirror. In the hotel, Joan reminds Roger,
I know as much about men as you know about advertising, and I know that the sneaking around is your favorite part.
Joan and Rachel both seem acutely aware, Joan slightly more so, that these two men are interested in them because they are each playing the role of the other woman.
Because sometimes things come. Good things, but there's no future in them.
You're a modern woman, Rach. Forget the wedding.
The color red, in a political context, is used as a descriptor for communism. Pete even does so himself in the episode.
I've skimmed this research, and the whole thing's pretty red. These communes, kibbutzes, it's positively Soviet.
Mad Men takes place in a time not far removed from the Red Scare and McCarthyism, which was an outing of anyone that was perceived to be communist at the time. Don is positioned against Roy at the gaslight, battling over Midge, but also political ideologies. Roy is red in Don's eyes, and as a representation of the communist scare still spilling over into the 1960s. As the series goes on, the hippie movement of the time often leaves Don feeling more like an outlier, and his rugged individualism that seems infallible in the first few seasons begins to fall out of fashion. The political and societal changes are instrumental to how the series is told. In the second episode of season 1, while in bed with Betty, Don tells her,
Jesus, Bets. It's like politics, religion, or sex. Why talk about it?
Mad Men's genius in Babylon is managing to take on all of these topics with profound weight without always needing to explicitly talk about it. It's a perfect example of show, don't tell, and having trust in the audience to be meticulously engaged.